when you think about the things that are going well, you can get through the things that aren't going well a little bit easier. And you start looking for the good, you start finding more good. You can get better at looking for the good. You can also get better at looking for the bad. Negativity is a steep slope, or is a
Sure.
slippery slope. Positivity, it's more of a climb.
Welcome to the Elev8 podcast. I am your host and coach, Tyler Johnson. Thank you for tuning in. And whether you've tuned in to elevate your mindset, your game, or just your day, you're in the right place. My guest this episode returns after his first appearance in episode 11 of the Elev8 podcast. He is currently now the middle performance coach at Exos in Phoenix, Arizona. He recently released his new book, Team Building Activities for Athletes. Welcome back to the Elev8 podcast, James Leath. James, how are you doing? It's good to have you back. I think you're only the third return guest, and I think you were well over 100 episodes ago, so it's glad to have you back.
Man, you've had 100 episodes since me?
I think so, yeah.
Fantastic. Let's go.
Yeah, this is like episode 120 something, so we're getting up there, and life has changed. And I guess to start, tell us about what you got going on at Exos and what you're doing there.
Yeah, man. I'm at Exos in Phoenix, Arizona. I just moved here about 6 months ago. Took a job as a mental performance coach for a program called the Game Changer. And so it's very similar to everything I've ever taught athletes, and but it's focused on corporate America. So the same ideas on sports psychology and leadership development, communication, relationships, all that stuff. It's still applicable, but it's in the business world. And
Sure.
so it's been a lot of fun, and the transition's been super easy.
Good. Well, great to hear. And I know you, I think we both spent some time coaching some football during the pandemic. Is that right? Got
Yeah.
back into a little bit on some sidelines.
Yeah, man. It was good. I was in Texas, and so it's always a dream of mine as a coach to coach Texas high school football.
Yeah.
And I was at Trinity Christian Academy. The program got a new coach and was looking for a receivers coach and a character leadership type guy. But he brought so much with him. The coach before him was Mike Singletary of NFL. And so
Yeah.
it was interesting to see how he went through stuff, and a lot of the staff stayed. And so it was a phenomenal experience. Steve Hayes is the head coach there, and has become one of my favorite mentors of all time. The line coach, a guy named Clint Schumacher, which would be an excellent guest, to be honest. He just hanging out with those guys. It was a great experience. But I mean, we had the masks on for the first couple games, so it was like that. But then it was interesting because it was in Texas. I remember it was like fourth or fifth game of the season, 2020, going 2020. And we get into East Texas and we walk into this barbecue pit, and we have our masks on. As soon as we walk in, it's like, excuse me, can you take your masks off? We're like, oh, okay. Like, we took them off right away. They got guns out there, so you don't want to offend anybody. So we did that, and we had a good season. And I was sad to leave them, but it was time. So now I'm in Phoenix.
Always enriching when you get to spend some more time with the kids on the sidelines, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I know when I spend time with kids and doing leadership stuff, when I do activities, and a lot of listeners probably know, I've probably learned them from James, and he's got a great new book out. He's always been one of my go-to people to learn how to interact and engage with kids and get them to really think. But at first, congrats on the book. What are you most excited about the book coming out?
Oh gosh. I mean, it's something that writing a book has been something that I've wanted to do ever since my English teacher told me I was an idiot in high school. And you're just like, okay, well, it took me 25 years. But what's interesting is, bro, it only took a couple days to write the book.
Yeah.
after 20 years. So it was like 20 years and 3 days. So that was basically it. Because all these activities I did when I was at IMG, when I was growing up as an athlete, as a Christian camps type stuff. There's all these things like these activities. I just noticed that it was the bonding part of any situation. And once you get to know somebody through the use of games and inside jokes, you're bonded in a better way.
Yeah.
And I first used a game. Let's see, I was right out of college. I was playing semi-pro football, and it was halfway through practice. And my coach came up to I was the quarterback. My coach came up to me. He's like, "Hey, practice is not going well. I need you to do something with these guys." So we're all at the water trough, and I was like, "Hey guys, I got an idea." Now, backstory: a few weeks before that, I went to an improv performance, and I got pulled up on stage.
Mm.
And after our game, I went to sit down. They were like, "Do you want to stay?" I was like, "Okay, cool." And I ended up staying for like 3 years. So it was I had no improv training, whatever. But I get to practice a couple weeks later, and I go, "Hey guys, we're gonna play a game." And we played this game called Zip Zap Zop, which is in the book. And the whole demeanor of the practice changed. We were laughing, having a good time, came back from water. We're like, "All right, coach." And we did all this stuff. After the practice, coach was like, "What did you do?" So I started explaining. I'm like, "All right, so there's one guy, he's got the zip, another guy's got the zop." And he's like, "Stop, I don't care. Just do it again tomorrow." And so I started doing improv games in the middle of practice, and it changed everything. So I'm like, there's something here. So then I started doing it as a coach. 25 years later, I've been doing it all the time. Every time someone does rock, paper, scissors cheerleader, I get a text message about it, or a Twitter tag, or an Instagram DM. I don't know how I became the unofficial person for rock, paper, scissors cheerleader, but
For sure.
it's been really cool.
And I think you talk about it a little bit in the book, and I think it's a dynamic I wanted to ask you about, because you talk about how the importance of having inside jokes, and I love it. I think there's some great experiences and stories you share there. But can you also talk about, I think we've probably also seen teams that have maybe a clowning culture, and they think it's unity, they think it's team building, but it's really a divisive clowning culture. Can you talk about the difference of what having inside jokes that build teams, and the difference between that clowning culture that we can sometimes see on some adolescent boys teams?
Well, that might be the best question I've got since I published the book. Well done. That was a fantastic question. You're absolutely right, because when you are clowning somebody, you're doing it to make them feel bad. You're doing it to make yourself feel better. When you are on stage with somebody, you and I are on stage, and we are making up a situation, and everybody's watching us. If we succeed, it's because each person was trying to make the other person look good. If we fail, then somebody was going for the cheap joke, somebody rejected an offering, somebody did something that just ended the story. And so when you can put two athletes on stage, and metaphorically, it can be in a locker room, it can be out in the field, whatever, in the pool, and they're trying to make each other look good by setting each other up in these games, it carries out into the field, where it's like, I want you to succeed. And we may be in competition for a starting job, but we're on the same team. And when it comes to inside jokes, the best example I can give you is Purple Duck. I was at IMG Academy. I was working with the 15-year-old girls, and we played this game called One Word Story. And we're sitting in the locker room, and they're going around the locker with telling a story one word at a time. And someone said purple, and the next person said duck. And for some reason, I don't know to this day, the girls were dying. They thought that was the funniest thing. And I'm sitting here like, what is going on? Like, what? Okay. And so the next day, because we ended the story and they went to practice, the next day I'm at a game. One of their best players gets tackled. You're not supposed to get tackled in soccer. She got tackled. Yeah. She gets up, and I'm thinking, this is red card at the best case scenario. She's going to try to ruin this girl's weekend. And as she starts running towards this girl that obviously fouled her, one of the girls, Tate, from the bench goes, "Purple Duck." And you saw this girl stop, look at Tate, smile, and then turn around. And I was like, that's it right there. Yeah. That All that work we did the day before was for that moment right there. And then it became the inside joke. They did something good, they'd become a purple duck, and so when you have things like that, it really does change the dynamic of a team where you are focusing on the good of your teammates. And when you fail, everybody laughs with you and at you, but also with you. And so
Right.
it's not that big of a deal. So you can create a culture of fun and good times, and you don't have to be sarcastic, and you don't have to be condescending, and all these things that our coaches were to us because their coaches were to them. You don't have to keep that going. And so you don't need a bully culture in order to be successful. What you need is a bunch of athletes who are childlike, not childish, but childlike.
Yeah.
And that will change everything.
Yeah. I just started watching that golf Netflix, whatever, Full Swing last
Mm-hmm.
night, and Ian Poulter's like 40 some years old, and he's very childish,
Yeah.
in
And
his,
there's a difference, right? Because you want
yeah.
to be childlike. You play the best. You're just
Yeah,
having fun. And yeah,
he's got
totally.
that. He's got that. I think healthy about. Maybe I said it wrong. He's childlike in his play. He's very playful.
Yeah.
But
And that's huge. You need
another
that.
thing I love about the different activities is how you group them. And I think one section I think is always important. And as you transition from, especially student athletes, from kind of the school day to practice, is that interrupt section. And I think, doing some interrupt games at the beginning of practice can sometimes be beneficial. Can you talk a little bit about why that interruption, that fun, that game, that difference maker can be a good transition before
Yeah.
practice?
Yeah. Your athlete's been at school all day. They've been sitting at a desk. They've been going through the drama of relationships and teachers they don't like and family issues. And are we friends? Are we more than friends? Like all this stuff. And that can like really emotionally and physically drain an athlete. And they get to you and you just think, oh, yeah, no, now you're just going to be playing a sport and you should be all in. It's like, that's not it. If you've ever coached at any level, you know that you can get 30 or 40 minutes into a practice and you can realize that things aren't going well. And you have two choices. You can get really angry, you can get mad and be like, you guys, this is ridiculous. You should be ready. Or you can remind yourself that these are freaking kids, not many adults. And they don't sit around the classroom thinking about soccer all day, football all day, baseball all day. Some might, not everybody. That's why you have all-star teams. Those people are thinking about it all day. So you interrupt that pattern of just listening passively, looking up at the coach, and you remind them that, hey, we're kids. We're playing a game. And you let them get that stuff out,
Yeah.
and then you start practice. I was a first grade teacher during the pandemic as well. And it was raining like 5 or 6 days in a row. And the principal was like, no recess.
Mm.
Because we can't all be on the field together because of COVID and whatever. And it was raining. So the kids are inside all day and behavior issues go through the roof,
Yeah.
except in my class, because we continue to do recess. And in fact, I would have 2 or 3 recesses throughout the day. Because if you give them that time to get out their stuff and it's not just kids, dogs. If you leave a dog in the house all day, they're going to tear things up. They need to get out and run around and do all this kind of stuff. And you come home and you get mad because the dog just tore up the trash. It's like, but you didn't even walk them in the morning. You just put them outside. So we all need recess. We all need this reset, this kind of shaking of like, hey, you're no longer in a boring classroom. Now it's time to play.
Yeah.
And so you do these little fun games where you make them thinking, sorts and mingles, and you have them running around, lining up, and alien cows and bears are running around. And it seems so silly. But if you take 5 minutes, then now you're ready for practice.
Yeah.
You're ready to go. And the kids are like, yes, let's go.
I know I love that you address this in the book because I've experienced it here and there as well. But you're playing some of these games you talk about. They sound a little silly, my friend. You're wasting my practice time, James. These whether it's a coach setting or student athletes, and someone just asks, why are you spending 5 minutes doing this versus XYZ? What's your response?
Well, it's pretty simple. If you don't if you don't allow for them to be a little bit silly, they're going to cause problems. And so I'll tell a parent, I'll be like, look, you have employed me to teach your kid certain skills in this sport. In order for them to be psychologically prepared and ready to soak this stuff in, I need to remind them that it's okay to have fun. And so we're going to be a little silly for 5 minutes, because if we're not, we're going to waste 45 minutes. I'm going to kick somebody out of practice because they're being a jerk. And now we have one less person. And now I got to think about, okay, they missed half of practice, so now I can't play them in the game as much. And you have all these other things. But it's like, if I could just get 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of practice, and I've done this from 8-year-olds to the Chicago Bulls, like there's no different in them needing to just be playful. But like, parents are always going to complain. They don't know what you're doing. So you address it at the beginning of the season. Be like, hey, you're going to see some unorthodox things. It's because I understand kids. I understand that they need to be silly and that we need to do things in order to have a solid 90 minutes of practice. I need to subtract 5 from that, so that way we can have a solid 85 minutes of practice. Yeah. Instead of 40 minutes of crap, 20 minutes of we're running, idiots, like you're not doing good. And it's like, hold on. Is it the kid's fault, or is it your fault as the coach, your inability to understand that children need to play? That's the bigger issue. Most of the time when coaches get frustrated at their athletes, they're frustrated at their self, at not being able to explain what they need to do. Sure. If you treat every kid exactly the same, you're doing your team a huge disservice. Some kids need a little bit more sugar because they got a lot of crap at home. Some kids need a lot of crap from you as a coach because it's too easy at home. You can't treat everybody the same. If you do, you're missing an opportunity to be influential.
Well, that you brought that up, because I think that relationship dynamics, right? How do we figure out what's different, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the games are all fun. I think you also, in knowing you for a long time, you are a great asker of questions. And I think, your book prompts some, but what are some ways that, coaches, or maybe I think sometimes we hear that, well, I get it, James, I want to treat them different, but I don't understand them. What are some maybe questions that pop into mind that they could enter into conversation with an athlete to get a better grasp on who they are?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think it's less about asking questions and more about creating a psychologically safe environment for the kid to look at the coach as more than just the person who creates the roster and calls the plays. And so you open up this dialogue of like, how's school going? And then remembering what they say, and a few days later be like, did you finish that paper? Like, how did it go? Oh, you got an F. Do you need tutoring? So now, like, you're interested in the student part of student athlete, not just how many times can I pass you the ball and can count on you to score. If you are interested in your players, they will do anything for you. I'll give you an example. I was sitting at a coffee shop years ago, writing a presentation for coaches, and I saw this guy who was on a first date, and he was not going well. Like, you could tell he was just bombarding this poor woman with just me, and I, and this, I'm so great. He's the me monster. So I'm in the bathroom and he walks in, and I was just like, it's tugging at me. I was like, I gotta say something because this guy doesn't see what I see. And I go, hey man, are you on a first date? And he said, yeah, how'd you know? And I was like, well, I was just watching y'all. I'm sitting next to you. I go, how do you think it's going? And he's like, good. I was like, no, it's not. It's not going good. And he kind of like bowed up, and I was like, bro, put your shoulders away. Like, that's not what this is. Like, right. I'm a coach. Like, I teach communication, and I have a question for you. How many questions have you asked her? And he's like, I've been asking questions. And I go, tell me, what have you asked? And that's when he like put his chest away, and he's like, yeah, you're right. Oh my gosh. I go, bro, listen, you don't know me from Adam, but I can tell you this. She said yes to you because you're interesting. The whole coffee shop knows you're interesting. We've all heard the stories, but she's going to say yes to the second date because you're interested in her. Yeah. And he was like, oh man, what should I do? And I was like, well, I think you can save it. You didn't ask me, but if you go and you sit down and you go, hey, I'm sorry, I've monopolized the conversation. I'm very nervous. I'd like to start over. He goes, okay, okay. So I go sit down and he goes sit down. I got my headphones on, but I can hear. And he says verbatim, he goes, I'm really sorry. I feel like I monopolized the conversation and I'm very nervous. Can we start over? And she was like, sure. And he goes, what were you like in high school? And I was like, yes. Turn my music on. Half an hour later, I look up and they're gone. And he comes over to me and he taps me on the shoulder and he's like, bro, I got a second date. I'm like, that's amazing. He's like, you're so right. Like if you're interested in the other person, that's a way better conversation than me just like trying to impress her with stuff. And so we can take that story as coaches, and the more you get to know your athletes, the more you'll understand why they're late, why they crumble under pressure, why you can always count on them to, make the right call. You understand them, and so you can put them in places to make them more successful. If you just look at their 40 time and how high they can jump and how whatever, like, okay, there's so much more to the athlete than their ability on the field. Because if you don't have their mindset and you don't understand why they do the things they do, then you're going to be just confused and frustrated. And like, why does he always do that? I can't count on her. And it's like, hold on, let's figure out why. Let's ask some questions, get to know them a little bit, and you'll know why.
I love that story. I caught in the second half of that story. I wanted to bring up a topic, but he admitted to the girl he was nervous, right? He stepped into maybe that out of the bravado and into the vulnerability a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about why vulnerability is important in leadership, in one, and maybe two, displaying it as a coach, how it can further our trust?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question because, like Tyler, you and I growing up, there wasn't a whole lot. There wasn't an internet. Like you can go to the library and get some VHSs or something. It was easier to trick people. Kids these days have access to everything on their phone, and so they can sniff out someone who's being inauthentic a lot faster than you and I could when we were growing up.
No doubt.
And so if you can show up for the kids and you can show up not just as coach, but as somebody who cares, then that opens up a whole different avenue of trust for them. And, like, I'll give you an example. To communicate better with your athletes, some very simple things you can do. Number one, take off your sunglasses. Like that's it. Like just literally take your sunglasses off, let them see your eyes. That right there can change a conversation. One, because they can see your eyes. Two, because they're not staring at themselves in your sunglasses. Number two, where's the sun? Like if the sun is behind you and you're trying to talk to a group of athletes, don't get mad at them for not looking at you. They're literally looking into the sun.
Yeah.
Also, is the girls' soccer team behind you? Now your boys are not paying attention. Like being aware of this kind of stuff changes everything. Get down on a knee. Get down on their level.
Yeah.
Take your glasses off. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Are you okay? Right. And now they're just like, oh my gosh, coach cares about me.
Yep.
And so now when coach takes you out of the game, instead of them going, F you, coach, they're like, coach, what happened? What's going on? And you can be like, listen, you're in a different headspace right now. I need you to go get some water. I need you to get yourself right because I need you back in there, but I don't know what you're going through, but I need you to perform. And, and you can have these kind of conversations because they trust you, And then also, which a rule I just broke, is keep your answers to less than 2 minutes because people aren't paying attention. The kids are busy. Like their phone is here, their watch is going off and, they're thinking about something else and they got a project due on Friday, and just keep your answers short. Yeah. And if you do these kind of things, the athletes will respond in a way that, I don't think I was always the most knowledgeable coach, but I think why I found so much success is because I knew my athletes. Mm-hmm. And I know this guy, if I'm coaching football, I need to put him in a certain position because he only needs 2 choices. And I can applaud him either way. If he goes left and he misses, hey, you made a decision. If you go right and you make it, hey, you made the play. And that's just that person. So I'm okay with putting that in position. And now they know that I trust them. So there's other ways to, really get to know your players. And I think that they will sniff you out if you're being fake. You can't last long. They'll know. The kids will know.
As we wind down, I'm going to put you on the spot here for some games. if I had to give you about like a 30-second clock and you had to pick about 5 games that you really wanted people to check out in this book,
Mhm.
what 5 are popping up in your head?
Let's see. I would go with the first one. I'll go so interrupt. I would say clumps, where you need to get your athletes in a certain amount of groups. Like, let's say you need them in groups of 3. So you just go, okay, you all have 5 seconds to get in groups of 10. And then they scramble around. And then you're like, all right, you got to go with different people, but I need you in groups of 5. And then you get in groups of 5. And then you're like, all right, get in groups of 3 with different people. And they're running around, they're grabbing each other, they're pushing each other, they're having fun. They're like, come over here, join us. Like, get out of here, get out of here. Now you have groups of 3. Now do your drill. That's a perfect one.
Yeah.
Let's see. Section 2, talk. I would say we, me, you, which would be at the end of practice, you get your student athletes in a circle and you say, okay, Tyler, what's something that we all did good? And you'd be like, we really hustled. We did a great job working together. Okay, cool. Alex, what's something you did good? He's like, well, I didn't cheat on any of the sprints and I went all out. And then you'd be like, all right, Sean, what's something somebody else did? And they have to pick someone out and be like, Tony got a PR in the lift this morning. And so you're enabling them and empowering them to actually cheer for each other, and notice the good things.
Yeah.
He knows the bad things. Section 3, grow, would be maybe 20 count, where you got them all laid out on the ground. I think we've done this before. We did this, I think, in a Way of Champions a few years ago. But you get them all laying down and you have them count to 20 and you don't know the order. And so it causes some anxiety and they have to find their voice. And if they say a number at the same time, then you have to start over. So you have to get over failure. And that's a fun one. The entertain section 4, I would say one word story, which is you got to be creative. You got to listen. You got to add to it. It's the improv type thing where you're, the yes and ideas. And then section 5 of hype. I mean, Zoom, which is straight out of Fresno State, me being an athlete, going to parties, playing drinking games. Like it's from there, but it's such a fun game because you're yelling, you're like, Zoom, Zoom. And you're just going around in the circle and there's, you got to react really quickly and you're laughing together. And so you create these environment and all the activities, all 52 of them have some element of entertainment,
Sure,
of getting to know each other. But that was 5 that I think
solid.
would be a lot of fun. I
Solid.
can, you know what? I'll write those down and I'll create a PDF for the listeners.
Cool. Well,
Those 5.
we'll have the book linked up here as well. And I guess one thing I always wanted to ask you too, I think as I've known you for a long time, I've always thought of you as a very grateful person, and I think for challenges, good, bad. And I know you've talked about gratitude with teams. How do you see the role of gratitude and the role it can play when it comes to creating a team culture?
I think that it's hard to be anything negative when you're in a grateful state. When you're thinking about what you're thankful for, what you have gratitude for, it's hard to also be frustrated about somebody or have anxiety about something. And you can have this attitude of gratitude is what people call it, or this gratitude practice, where at the end of practice, you'll think about and write down 3 things that you're thankful for. Because otherwise, there was a game a few years ago. I think it was Eli Manning, Drew Brees. And like Eli had the game of his life. I think he threw for like 6 touchdowns. It was a Monday night game.
Okay.
But Drew Brees threw for 7 touchdowns. And so like Eli had the game of his life and lost.
Yeah.
And it's like you can go to the locker room and be like really bummed, or you can be like, well, we lost, but I also showed up for my team. I did everything I could in order to put our team in a good place. And so when you think about the things that are going well, you can get through the things that aren't going well a little bit easier. And you start looking for the good, you start finding more good. You can get better at looking for the good. You can also get better at looking for the bad. Negativity is a steep slope,
For
or is a
sure.
slippery slope. Positivity, it's more of a climb.
Yeah.
I've never said that before, but I kind of like that.
That was
It's
pretty.
negativity is a slippery slope. Positivity is a climb, and that's just because most people default to the negative. It
Yeah.
strikes our psyche a lot sharper than the good things. We remember the heartaches over the times we fell in love. We remember the getting fired over the getting promoted. Like it's just, you have to be very intentional about celebrating the good things and remembering them.